All right, I got the components together for step 1. Got 2 frame plates, bumper angle brackets, square hole bushings, round hole bushings, 2 bolt head spacers, hose clamp, 2 3/4 inch spacer tube, 3 1/4 inch spacer tubes, got the Helios logo, 1 inch carriage bolts, 3/8/16, 4 1/2 inch 3/8/16 carriage bolts, and then 3/8/16 serrated flange lock nuts. So all bolts on the left-hand side go from the right to the left as we're looking at it here. We'll start at the top, 2 3/4 inch spacers on top. We're going to leave all the fasteners loose in this step. Once we get it mounted to the tractor, we'll snug everything up once we have a chance to square it up. Okay, so that's the 2 3/4. Now we're going down to the 3 1/4 spacer tubes. Okay. One-inch carriage bolts. Through the bumper angle brackets. Into the round holes. And the tube goes right through here, so this will mount to the tube. Again, leave all the fasteners loose at this step. Cool. And we'll put on the bushings. So on the top, we've got round hole bushings on the outside, bolts coming from the inside out. There's a grease channel here, oil or grease. Orientate that up. Bolts from the inside out. And this square head of the carriage bolt mates with the square and the laser cut frame rail. Again, leave these loose. Once we get the pins in, the pivot pins, and everything leveled on the tractor, we'll snug everything up. Same on the up top side, got the grease port there. We're going to orientate that up. Bolts from the inside out. And the bolt heads are covered behind this bolt head spacer here. Okay, we're going to install the bushings on the bottom. We're going to do square hole bushings on the inside, bolts going out. Got the grease port there, that goes towards the frame rail. Grease port there. It goes towards the frame rail. Gonna make it. Oh God. Gonna make it symmetric. Okay, that is the left-hand frame rail. So when you're sitting on the tractor, left-hand side, that's this rail right here. We're going to set that aside and start on the right-hand frame rail. Now we're doing the right hand frame assembly. Got the two frame plates here, same as the other side. 4 bumper angle brackets, same as the other side. 2 square hole bushings, 2 round hole bushings, 2 bolt head spacers. Helios logo, hose clamp. We got 2 2 3/4 inch spacers, 3 1/4 inch spacers, 1 inch carriage bolts, 4 1/2 inch carriage bolts, and 3/8/16 serrated flange lock nuts. All bolts go from the left to the right as we see it on this one. Okay, 3 1/4 inch spacer tube. And I forgot the hose clamp down here. No problem. We're moving on to the bumper angle brackets. Just like that. Okay. Now we're going to install the bushings exactly the same as the other side. So we'll start at the top. We got round hole bushings on top, bolts from the inside out. Bolts are coming from the inside out. Lubrication channel on top towards the frame plate. Leave that loose. Lubrication port towards the frame plate. So you can squirt a little grease in there and it'll go down to the pivot shaft. Okay. Move down to the bottom. Bushings on the inside. Bolts going from the inside out. Lubrication port towards the frame plate. Again, lubrication channel towards the frame plate. Make sure they're symmetric. They don't have to be, but I want them to be. Everything's loose. And that is the right hand frame rail assembly. We'll set it aside with that one. All right, now we're going to build the left hand arm assembly. I've got round hole bushings, square hole bushings, bolt head spacers, arm top plates here, the curved parts, arm bottom plates here. Got the left hand brace. So once it's mounted to the left side of the tractor, the large hole for the 3/4 inch threaded rod will go down here, flange outward. We've got hose clamp, 2 1/4 inch spacer tubes, 1 3/4 inch spacer tubes, 1 inch carriage bolts, 3 1/2 inch carriage bolts, 4 1/2 inch carriage bolts, 3/8/16 serrated flange lock nuts. All the fasteners in this assembly are 3/8/16. So on the left hand side, all the bolts go from the right to the left. I'm going to start by assembling the lower arms to the upper arms. Okay, now the hose clamp goes on the top here to the inside. Okay. I'm going to set this down on the table now. And continue assembly in this orientation. So at the bottom, we've got bolt head spacers on the outside with 4.5-inch carriage bolts. 2.25-inch spacers on the inside. Okay. I'm going to pull the leg back up. I've got three and a half inch bolts going through here. 2.25-inch spacers. Now we're going to put on the brace. Which goes there to there. 3.5-inch bolts. I'm going to put the top bolt in, 3.5-inch carriage bolt, through the bolt head spacer on this side. So and then in between, we got 1.75-inch spacers. And then the other bolt head spacer goes on the other side. The nut. Okay. Everything stays loose still until we get it on the machine and get everything squared up. Moving on to the bushings. We'll start here since we're here. We got round hole bushings on the inside, bolts going from the outside in. Got the grease channel in accessible area. This is kind of the orientation that it sits on the tractor, so I'm going to put it up. Bushing should be loose at this point. Another round hole. Grease port up and towards the arm. Bolts from the outside in. Good. Moving up here, got square hole bushings on the inside, bolts going from the inside out. Grease port facing up. Another square hole bushing, grease port facing up and towards the arm plate. Bolts from the inside out. Good. And then we got midway up right here. Round hole bushings on the outside, bolts going from the inside out. Move myself around a little bit. Round hole bushings on the outside, grease port towards the frame. Excuse me, towards the arm. As we move down here, we got round hole bushings on the inside, bolts going from the outside in. That is the left-hand assembly. Everything's kind of loose still. Once we get all the pivot pins in, get it situated on the tractor, we'll snug everything up. We'll set that aside with the frames. All right, we're going to be assembling the right-hand arm. So we've got round hole bushings, square hole bushings, 4 bolt head spacers, 2 arm top plates, the curved plates exactly the same as the other side, bottom plates exactly the same as the other side. Got a brace. This brace will go on this side, big hole towards the bottom, towards the bucket. 2 1/4 inch spacer tubes, 1 3/4 inch spacer tubes, 1 inch carriage bolts, 3 1/2 inch carriage bolts, and 4 1/2 inch carriage bolts. 3/8/16 serrated flange lock nuts. So very similar as the, it's actually identical to the other arm, except the bolts are going the opposite way. Bolts are going from the left hand, left to right on this assembly. 3 1/2 inch with a short spacer tube in between. Arms on the outside. Lower arms on the outside, excuse me. Okay. Bolt head spacers go on the outside. Two 1/4 inch spacer inside. Bolt head spacer on the opposite side. Oop, that's a 4 1/2 inch bolt there. shoot. Did it again. Brace goes there. Okay, I'm gonna set this down on the table. Okay. Brace goes there to there. 3.5 inch bolts. Brace. Inch and 3/4 spacer. And on the opposite side, we got the bolt head spacer. And the nut. Down here, we got 3.5 inch bolt, 2.25 inch spacer, to a nut. We got 3.5 inch bolt, 1 3/4 inch spacer tube, 3/8 nut. Excellent. Flip to the second page for the bushings. Start at the bottom here, detail view. Got round hole bushings on the inside. Bolts going from the outside in. Bushing should be loose. Moving up. This is the pivot, the upper pivot for the bucket cylinder here. Detail B, we got square hole bushings inside, bolts going from the inside out. Start on that side. Okay. Moving down to the other end. At this pivot point here, we got round hole bushings on the outside, bolts going from the inside out. Okay. Coming down here, we got round hole bushings on the inside, bolts going from the outside in. Okay. It's the right hand arm. All the bolts are free, bushings are loose. There you go. For the next step, we're going to be assembling the left-hand bucket pivot. Quantity 2, so I've got 2 of what the BOM notes here. So I got round hole bushings, 1-inch 3/8/16 carriage bolts. I've got the bucket spacer plate and the bucket pivots. I've got them orientated as shown on the 3D model here, which makes it a little bit easier for assembly. Grease channel towards the inside. Just like that. There's one left hand. Pushing on the inside, grease channel up. You got the second left-hand bucket pivot. Next, we're going to assemble the right-hand bucket pivot. I've got 1-inch carriage bolts, round hole spacers, or round hole bushings, excuse me, 2 bucket pivots, 2 bucket spacer plates, 3/8/16 flanged lock nut. Again, I've got them orientated as shown on the 3D here. And we're leaving all the fasteners loose for now until we get it installed on the machine and get everything squared up. Okay, first one's done. Okay, 2 right-hand bucket pivots. I'm gonna set those aside and move on to step 7. Okay, I dropped the loader and I disconnected the anchors, and I also removed the existing bumper mount assembly that was on here so we can build another one. So I've got the 1/2 13 by 1.5 button heads, 1/2 13 serrated flange lock nuts. I've got 3/8/16 by 1 inch carriage bolts, and then 3/8 16 serrated flange lock nuts. We're going to do a little bit of sub-assembly before it goes onto the tractor. So these will be mounted like this to the tractor. Oh boy. Got a 9/16 wrench. I'm gonna get these lined up nicely. And I am gonna tighten these down. Okay, that's gonna go on this side because the carriage bolt heads are facing out. Actually goes like that. So it'll go on this side, and then we're gonna assemble the opposite side. Bolts go in the opposite way, and it's just for appearance. Bolts could go either way, doesn't really matter. Get these lined up. Okay. Now they're only going to fit one way. We're going to gauge that hole and that hole. And this angle part goes down, so when you're driving into the beam, the tube of the loader, it'll kind of ride up on this so you can get into it easier. The button head does need to go on the outside, and the reason being is on this side you've got, when your deck is installed, you've got that cam lever. It'll come up and engage one of these holes here, so it needs to be able to ride past the head of that button head. Okay, I'm going to get these level. There will be a small gap here. And the gap doesn't need to be precise because there's quite a bit of freedom when we install the anchors as to where this is, front to back on the tractor. But what is important is that it's the same side to side, so your loader sits square on the tractor. And it's also important that the height is about the same side to side, so your loader doesn't sit tipped on the tractor. A little bit's fine. There's plenty of design flexibility in the anchors and how it goes on, but measure from here to the ground. Make sure it's the same side to side. Make sure this gap is consistent side to side. Got them equal. Got equal gaps on each side. And I also grabbed a level across the loader brackets and across the tractor bumper. They're not exact, but they're pretty darn close. So, I'm happy with that. Snug up all the fasteners on this assembly, 3/8 and 3/4, and then this will be on your tractor even if the loader is unmounted. Now we're moving on to step 8, which is the anchor installation onto the tractor. There's a little bit of pre-assembly we can do, but I've got left and right hand anchor brackets. I've got 2 top plates, 1 3/4 long 7/16 14 carriage bolts, 1 1/4 long 7/16 carriage bolts, 7/16 serrated flange lock nuts, 7/16 ready rod, and this is the only assembly that uses 7/16 fasteners. It's the largest we could do utilizing the tractor's existing holes. So it's as robust as we can get it with what the tractor offers us. So we can pre-assemble Okay, that mounts right there on your tractor to the existing holes. This plate's on the outside, bolts facing in. I think I actually did the other side incorrectly. So that mounts the existing frame holes. I'm gonna flip this. Now this is a real nice benefit of this design. If you assemble something wrong, it really doesn't matter. It's not like welding where you'd have to grind it off. That'll go on your tractor just like that. This will accommodate the pin that holds the loader on when you mount and dismount it. Okay, got 11/16 socket, 11/16 open end. Now we're gonna go under. Got the lights under here, so hopefully you guys can see everything. There's 2 spots where you can get a threaded rod through. And that's this hole here. And then the second one goes through this bottom hole in each bracket. So that hole is right here on both sides. The other side has a bracket welded to it. That's fine. You can leave that there, and you can even keep this one here if you want. I don't know what the design intent of it was. It's not going to add any strength. It just makes assembly more difficult. So this bar goes here, the second bar goes through this hole, and then this hole we're going to use the 1 3/4 carriage bolts because there's interference underneath right here, so you can't run a bar all the way through. So what I would recommend is getting that one started. Get the nut on the back, it'll hold this thing in position for you. That's pretty good. You can see that bar tips out that way, but it doesn't tip out the opposite way. It must be something with the extra thickness of this bracket that's welded over here. So we're gonna start, get that started. We need to get a nut on the inside of each side, so I'm gonna start this nut this way and then run it across. And I'm going to start another nut the opposite way on the inside. It's going to be about there from this one over. You want about equal stick out on both sides. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Now you want to snug those up. Not so they're deforming your frame rails, but just so they're pushing against. Like that. Okay, and then we'll put nuts on from the outside as well, clamp everything in place. Now we can do this one here as well from this side. going through the bottom hole of the bracket. We might have to center it up a little bit after we get the opposite side on. Okay. We'll also put a nut on the outside of this. Now we're not going to really tighten anything up quite yet. Once we get the bumper on and the arms installed, we'll have to line up those arms with these anchors, and we'll want a little bit of freedom. Once that's all lined up, we can snug this all down. So I'll go install that bracket on the other side. Okay, in review, we've got 7/16 threaded rod going from the lower hole to the lower hole over the anchor assemblies. 7/16 threaded rod going through the rear holes of the threaded assembly, and then a 7/16 carriage bolt going to the front holes. And these threaded rods will keep these from flexing the frame rail when you're putting load on this. Again, nothing's tight yet. We'll need some freedom to get everything lined up when we put the frames on. Now we're going to start the bumper assembly. So I've got the bumper cross beam, 4 alignment plates, tube stand weldment, got 4 3/8/16 by 4.5 carriage bolts, and 4 3/8/16 serrated flange lock nuts. Let your bumper into position, approximately centered. We're going to slide the weldment in position. This thing is symmetric, so there is no right way or wrong way. Line it up with the holes approximately, and then we're going to put the alignment plates on. Okay, now the taper side goes back, so when you're driving into the loader, it can help center you up. It'll kind of center you side to side inside the loader. So we'll put the carriage bolts through. Through the tube, through the other side. Okay. Now plates go on the bottom in the same orientation. Okay, now you want everything to be fairly centered. Somebody's playing outside. Keep approximately a 1/16 gap here on each side. You want it snug so your loader doesn't have freedom, lateral freedom side to side, but you want to loosen enough that you can drive into the loader without fighting it. So I'd say a 1/16 on either side. That'll give you an 1/8 total. Okay, got them pretty well centered, top and bottom. Want the bottom brackets aligned, the bottom plates aligned with the upper. Looks pretty good to me. Snug everything down. Got a little freedom there, that's what we want. Just a little bit. Okay, that'll keep your loader centered on your tractor. Again, you want a little gap so you can drive into it, but not so tight you're fighting it. So I'd recommend about a 1/16 per side. And if you want it tighter later, you're welcome to slide them out. If you want to looser, you're welcome to slide them in. Not hard. 4 nuts. Okay, and now probably the shortest step out of the entire assembly is the tube jack. So take the swivel foot off the bottom. Drop it in. There it goes. Now you can use the Helios multi-wrench, or you can use a 5/8. Doesn't matter. The intent of this wrench is that you can keep it in your little glove box there, and it'll do these if necessary, and also these if necessary. You'll be using these far more than these. You might never touch these, but as you load and unload the loader, you need to use this quite a bit. So just gonna run it up. Run the nut down. 1 1/8 wrenches. And jam them together so they stay. And that's it. That's that entire step. It's loose now, certainly, but once we get it put together, it won't be. All right, now it's coming together. Now we're going to install the frame rails on both sides. So I've got 3/8 by 3.5 carriage bolts, 3/8 serrated flange lock nuts, 5-inch pivot pins, and 4 hairpin cotter pins. Oh, not to mention both frame rails that you already built. So we're going to grab these. Oh boy. Set it on there. Good. Didn't drop that one. Okay. I've got 2 6-inch bar clamps I'm going to put on here to keep that from walking off again, and to hold the tube kind of upright against the bumper. So I've got it pretty well centered here. There's quite a bit of flexibility or freedom on where these are positioned. So pretty good is good enough. Okay. 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 So I like that. What I see is that tube is sitting down in the pocket on both sides, which is good. Let's see if I can So I like that too. So this is the pin that you'll be taking in and out when you attach and detach the loader. That's the single pin that comes out. So you want that kind of all lined up in there. You want that to be able to spin freely. So that's real good right there. That's sitting down in the notch nicely. So we can, and we will, tighten all of this assembly up. Let's do the other side. Really like that. Feels great. So that's all excellent. Great. So I'll grab some wrenches. I'm going to grab 11/16 for the anchor assemblies on the tractor here. And I'm going to grab a 9/16 for the 3/8 fasteners. We're going to snug this up. Okay, so these fasteners are loose here. So this all has some play in the square hole that mates with the tube. So what I'd recommend, picking it up slightly, match the top plates here, and then tighten these up. Well, that spins a little harder than I'd like. A little more friction there. I'm going to see if I can kind of reorganize things here a little bit. That ain't bad. Additionally, this anchor isn't tight yet, and it's kicked out a little bit. So when we tighten that up, it's going to pull that vertical, and it'll give us a little more freedom in this through hole here. Okay, I'm going to do the same over here. Pick that up slightly. Get those two plates kind of aligned. Snug these up. Now before we tighten these, I'm going to go down and tighten everything in the anchor. That's going to pull these plates vertical. That's going to really set where these are on your tractor. So I'm going to grab 11/16 a socket. You can see this drawing up a little bit as I snug that. And I want to go more. I want to go quite a bit more. So I'm going to use these nuts on the bottom here to push these brackets out just slightly. That ain't bad. I'm going to do a little more. Now, as you can imagine, the bracket on the opposite side is also tipping out as we expand the distance in the middle here. It's not perfectly level, but that pin's pretty free in there, which I like. So I'm going to snug up the rest here and then go to the other side. Okay, those are tight. Ooh. Sorry, gang. Ooh, that's nice. That one's actually pretty darn good right there. And that feels good there too. So I'm gonna snug these up here as well. Oh boy. Not bad. I can see that it's in the bottom part of the through hole here, and I've got some freedom in this in this bolt here too. I can pull it up just slightly, tighten this down, and that'll center me in the through hole. That's pretty good. Now, if these don't spin completely free, that's okay. It just makes loading and unloading your loader a little bit more difficult. You got to kind of weave it through the center plate here. If you got everything aligned pretty well, when you drive in, set it down, you can pop that pin right in, put the cotter pin on the back, and you're off to the races. It's real easy. So this one's real nice. I'm just gonna tighten this where it's at. Pretty sweet there. Okay, now I'm gonna snug up these anchors, or the angle brackets, excuse me. Oh, baby. Oh, yeah. Not bad at all. So that's pretty solid. So that is your frame rails. I'm going to keep these clamps on for a short time until we get the arms installed. And it just keeps everything situated. Alright, the next step is installing the arms. So I've got both arms laid out. The right hand side, when you're sitting on the mower, is here. Bolt heads to the outside, makes it look a little bit more polished. Strengthening gusset towards the outside. Opposite on this one. Strengthening gusset to the outside. I've got 2 6-inch pivot pins, 4 hairpin cotter pins. Oh. I put a couple blocks of wood here before the cylinders are installed on the next step. The cylinders will prevent it from touching the frame rails here, but right now it wants to kind of droop down in there, and it'll kind of make it difficult for you. So if you set the front of the arm on those blocks, and weave the pin through. Remember, everything's loose for this reason. Okay. That's where that beauty goes. There we go. There you go. Those are your main pivot pins. There and there. And we'll certainly get everything tightened up, but not quite yet. So I made an error and installed the wrong pins here. So this pivot pin will never come out unless you need to disassemble the loader for some reason. But this comes out frequently, and the bucket ones come out frequently. This doesn't. So I'm gonna take these pins off and install the straight cotter pins here. Oh boy. Nothing to it. Again, these should be straights, and not the hairpins. That joint won't be coming apart. Stays just like that. Here's your grease ports, front and back. All right, step 13 is the cylinder installation. We've got 4 identical cylinders. They're all 1.5" bore by 16" throw. We've got 2 6" pivot pins, 4 5" pivot pins. I got one in my pocket already. And then straight cotter pins. I did grab 1 hairpin because it's kind of nice to have a handle to thread the pins through the holes when you're working on them. So this cylinder is going from the frame mount pivot here up to the arm pivot here. Hydraulic ports are facing inward, and grease zerk is facing up, so you have access to it. This grease zerk is on the bottom, and there's no change in that. Okay, perfect. That's the 6" pivot pin here. I've got the 5" in my pocket. Yeah, typically you don't get lucky enough for them just to work. So let's see if we can cool, close enough for it to work. So that short stack of boards I had was about right. That's that. Now that's fully compressed, so I would have had to have picked the arm up a little bit if I couldn't get that through. I might have to on the other side, depending upon how it stacks up. Grab another 5" pin from my pocket. The cylinder's the same. It's going from the frame pivot up to the arm pivot here. Hydraulic port's going towards the tractor. Grease zerk facing up. Perfect. The 5" pin for the top. Ooh, it worked out close enough. Great. Done. Those 2 are in. We've got 2 5" pins left. It's going from the pivot here, and it's just going to drape until we get the bucket installed. Hydraulic ports going inward. I want the grease zerk facing up. Great. Scuffed up that pin a little bit, shouldn't be a problem. That pin is not coming in and out as long as the bearing surfaces are good. We're happy. Those in. Oop, missed two over there. Oh boy. I like it. Next is the arm crossbar installation. We've got three 3/4 10 threaded rods, 3 2 1/4 diameter long tubes, 6 2 1/4 spacer tubes, and 3/4 10 serrated flange lock nuts. Okay, let's start here. Now we're going to put 3 bars, 1, 2, 3, through both sides. Okay, centered up approximately. I would not snug these up yet, because it's nice to be able to kind of see where your rod is going as you work your way towards the bottom. Center that up. Two more nuts. Okay, crossbars installed. Everything's loose at this time. Once we get the bucket pivots installed, we'll snug everything up. Okay, step 15 is the bucket pivot assembly. We've got 4 6-inch pivot pins, straight cotter pins, got the left hand pivot sub-assemblies that we did earlier, and the right hand assemblies that we did earlier. On all these, the bushing is to the bottom, slots towards the bucket. Bushing toward the bottom, slots towards the bucket. I did label mine left earlier, makes it a little bit easier, but certainly not critically necessary. Okay. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna steal this clamp. I want to keep this kind of together. So the bucket will attach here, and that all moves as a unit. You don't want extreme pressure on that. You just want to keep them together. So when we bolt on the bucket plates here, it's in the right spot. You got the pins. Pins go in each hole. Nothing to it. Okay, step 16 is the bucket mount assembly. I've got two bucket mount plate fronts, which have the chamfered holes, two bucket mount plate rear, which have the non-chamfered holes, 3/8/16 serrated flange lock nuts, and 3/8/16 flathead cap screws. So I'm going to grab one front, one rear, then I'm going to put this on the correct hole. Okay, same on the bottom. And now it's just a matter of putting them all in. Beautiful. Nothing to it. Okay, step 17. Now we're going to make sure we've got things tightened that should have been tightened already, and we're going to continue tightening things. So earlier in the assembly, we tightened all the 7/16 inch fasteners on the anchors on both sides. We also tightened these from the frame to the bumper beam on both sides. And that should be what's done up till now. So the next step is to tighten the 3/4 inch nuts on the crossbars. I try to keep them symmetric side to side. As you're snug in one side, make sure the other side isn't spinning. Gotta tighten them their correct way, otherwise not gonna work out. You can really reef on those. The 3/4 inch will take a lot of torque, and you want those to be tight. If you have an off-center load, one side is going to try to pick up more than the other, and having those snug will prevent it from twisting. Now we're going to move to all these. Also making sure in here all these plates should be pretty snug. Excellent. If you're feeling strong, you can pick this up. Now, you're going to tighten all the other bolts. All of them. Bushings, everything you see. Snug them up, tighten them up. Everything. The chances are good you'll miss one. So, if you're like me anyways, go through and hit them again. Right now, everything should be tightened up. I'm not going to show you guys that because it's kind of a waste of time, but literally tighten every other nut you see. Make sure everything's snug. All right, step 18 is connecting the hydraulic hoses. So we've got white, yellow, blue, and red. We got white, yellow, blue, and red. They're pre-assembled, although they're not tight. They're just ready to lay in there. So we're going to start with white, which is arm raise. So the white will be going to the lower hydraulic ports on each of the arm cylinders. Grab the white. QD obviously goes down there. Gonna lay it in here. This is a ORB connection. All the threaded fittings on the hydraulic cylinders are ORB or O-ring boss. So you'll thread them in and snug them down. There it goes. All the fittings on the connectors are JSC. They've got a 37-degree flare, which is really nice. It's kind of a built-in swivel. Okay, we'll come back and snug those up. Now this hose hanger you can use if you want. There's lots of options. You can route it through the frame rail here if you want. You can put it through the hanger. For us right now, I think I'm going to put it through the frame rail. Keep it out of the way. I'll move on to the yellow, which is the arm lower, which is the upper ports on each of the hydraulic cylinders. And that is yellow. So the QD, fairly obviously, goes down by your tractor. Oops. Okay, and then this drapes under. Okay, I like that. Blue is for bucket extend. It's going to be these two fittings here. When we push oil in at the top of the cylinders, it pushes the piston down. It's going to tip your bucket forward. Okay, and then it goes directly across to the mating port on the opposite side. Great. Now there's another hose hanger here. You can loop it through if you choose. You can route the hoses however you see fit. Those are there if you want to use them. I go both ways on them. I'm not really particular one way or the other. And then we've got red, which is bucket retract, which is going to be these two ports here. Okay, I've got 3/4 and 11/16. The O or B fittings here are 11/16. One, two, three. Four. Five. Six. Seven. Eight. Now I'm going to work backwards with a 3/4. Snug all the JSC fittings. One. Two. Okay. So I've got my tractor labeled with these hydraulic cap colors. That doesn't mean that you need to match my colors. You can do whatever color scheme you want. The colors on these hydraulic hoses have no correlation to the colors I have there. When I put these on, they're random. I just make the two match and then I know where to plug them in. And even where they're marked to plug in, that can be personal preference. So I've got the arm raise and lower on the bottom lever, and I've got the bucket retract extend on the top lever. And that's a common way to do it because the bottom lever has a float function where if you're back dragging, you can set it to float, it'll follow the contours of the ground, but that's not to say you need to do it that way. So this is the setup that works for me, and you're welcome to change it as you see fit. So I started with the blue, going to the upper left as viewed from the front here. So I'm going to tighten up the NPT fitting here. There's already thread tape on there. And these are the only NPT fittings in these hydraulic connections. Okay, so I got it kind of in the orientation I want here. I'll get these out of the way. Okay. Now I'm going to find probably the lower left, because it's difficult to access when these two front ones are on. So lower left is yellow. So we'll find the yellow one. It's actually right here. It fell off. Lower left is yellow. Okay. Okay, so I got upper left, lower left. I'm gonna go to the upper right when viewed from the front. Upper right is red. Okay, great. Okay, and then lower right ought to be white. White is lower right. Score. Okay. Okay, I like how those are hanging. Might have to tidy some things up here depending upon your preferences, where you want your hoses ran, how you want them secured. It's kind of up to the user. Super. Now we're gonna fire it up and see if it leaks. So I got bottom lever down, bottom lever up. Top lever, bucket extend. Top lever, bucket retract. Pretty freaking awesome. Works great. I did have one leak right here, so I snugged that fitting up. Works great. When you're moving it for the first time, be careful. Make sure your hoses aren't going to be pinched. Make sure everything's looks right. Just go slow, up and down, looking for problems. But I don't think you'll have any issues. So next we're gonna assemble the bucket. All right, step 19, we're gonna be assembling the bucket. We've got 1/4-20 carriage bolts, 1/4-20 serrated flange lock nuts, 1/4-20 flathead bolts, bucket securing plates, and I've got bucket latches, bucket latch ends, side plates, and then the front and back bucket plates. So So we're going to start by hanging these in position. So there's 5 of this style. They go on either side of the bucket pivots. And you got the ends, which do not have the pin bar on the back. As the title indicates, they go on the end. And then I'm going to set the base plate on, which has the holes in the front for the scraper blade. The back does not have those holes. The bottom does. Great. Start installing the security plates. So these slots are all tapered, so you can slide them pretty easily in the back. You push them to the front to snug them up. That one might require a tap. Okay, and then the carriage bolts go through the slots, the rectangular slots on the bottom, nuts on top. Okay, I'm going to grab a wrench and a soft hammer to tap that down. Okay, now I'm going to install the back plate. There. Nothing to it. Same tapered slots back here. Push the securing plates down to lock them in place. Okay. Okay, now we're going to put on the scraper blade. Well, we got the bucket elevated here. So one side is countersunk and has a tapered edge on it. So countersink down, tapered edge towards the front, as you can imagine. I'm going to snug these up. The carriage bolts won't spin in the rectangular slots, which is awesome, but these will. And if they just spin in your finger, you'll need to grab an Allen wrench and hold them. Great. Now I'm going to drop the bucket down, pick it off, and then I'm going to put all the bolts in the back because it'll be a little bit easier to reach them. Nothing to it. Now tighten them all up. You got yourself a bucket. Great. And then on to step 20, which is super easy. We're just going to put pins in here and latch the bucket. All right, for the final step, we're going to load the bucket, or attach the bucket, I suppose. Now you'll likely be doing this quite a bit in your activities. If you want to put the forks on, drop the bucket for whatever reason, maybe you're mowing and you don't want to take the whole loader off, but you want to drop the bucket, no problem. Real easy, real quick. So I'm going to fire the tractor up, and I've got some safety features overridden on my mower, but I want to be able to show you kind of how it engages and goes into the bucket, but you can do this all from the driver's seat. So I'm going to pull in, so these are on the outside of this on both sides. This is lower than these. Okay, I'll do the same over here. Got a pin. Goes through. Nothing to it.